impurities. So you can be able to check from time to time, and you should be able to evaluate the hay you are getting. Something else, maybe visually, you also check is the leaf to stem ratio, because we also do score hay in terms of leaf to stem ratio. In the leaves, that is where most of the nutrients are concentrated. So if your hay has more leaf to stem, then you're in a better position. You'll get a bit better value nutritionally than those who have just stem compared to leaf. And I think I see this a lot when it comes to alfalfa or lucerne. You find farmers are buying hay, the bales of lucerne at a very high cost. And all they are getting, or mostly what they get, is the stem. Most of the leaf has probably fallen off because of the drying in the farms or in the fields. So they are buying bales of stems, which compared to when they get both of them, it would be have better feed value. So we usually recommend that farmers really check what is the stem to leaf ratio of the things that you're buying, the hay. For straw, I know most of the time you might probably find it has less leaf, but for hay, we recommend at least check the leaf to stem ratio. Something else we also do is a hand squeeze, or what we call lignin test, without really necessarily having to take it to the lab, where we just take a handful of hay and you squeeze it in the palm of your hands. And what we say is, if you get the prickling effect, if it prickles you and you can't almost fold it into a ball, then we usually just say that that has high lignin. Yeah, it's just a layman type of thing. But of course, definitely, if you want to know exactly what lignin amount you have in your plants or in your forages, then you have to do a sample, a lab analysis. Then something else which is very important is weighing. Many of the farmers we've met across all these farms we've visited over the years is somebody who will be like, my hay or my hay bales are usually 14 to 15 kilos at a certain price. But we ask them, have you weighed them? No. You almost you almost always trust the person who is delivering it to you. And unfortunately, what we've seen is most of the times we have weighed, actually, all the time we go to the farm, we usually carry the weighing scale. And you find an average of 10, and 10 is slightly on the higher side. We found bales that are 6 kilos in weight. Others, can go up to 12, which most of the times doesn't happen, but they are. It's not to negate that there are farmers who can get the 14, 15 kilos. But most of the times we get between 6 to 10 kilo per bale. So then we talk to the farmer and tell them it's not really about the number of bales you have, it's the quality and also the quantity per the bale. And finally is to take a sample for lab analysis. I think with the evolution of best practices, and professional farmers, yeah, farmers who want to do it the right way, not just traditionally or using the knowledge passed down. We have really emphasized on sample testing and taking the forages for analysis. Right now, we have analysis for labs that are able to analyze some forages like maize silage, and the different kinds, the napier, and hay. So it is very important for you, especially when you're engaging with a nutritionist, that you know exactly what quality of ingredients you're having. If it is a silage, what quality do I have? If it is a hay, what quality do I have? Yes, we can rely on the analysis on the book reports, and the things that we have, but it would be better if we work based on exactly what you have in the farm. So when we're talking about hay, we cannot not talk about fiber, because with hay and straw, people always think about fiber. So what is fiber? Fiber is what is in the cell wall and what gives the plant structure. Yeah. And we have two things. Fiber is made up of two things. There are two structural carbohydrates, which is the cellulose and the hemicellulose, and this is the digestible part of the plant. Then we have lignin. It is not part of the carbohydrates, but it combines with these two, the cellulose and hemicellulose. And when lignin is too much or high, very high in a particular feed or forage, then it makes the carbs, the structural carbs, less accessible to the rumen enzymes. Therefore, the feeds become less digestible. So it is very important when you're thinking about fiber, you have to think of all this. Because I see many people are just like, but hay is good, cows need fiber. Yes, cows need fiber. As I've said, fiber, we will have to see whether fiber is a foe or a friend. Yeah. And I think to some extent it can be both. Fiber is necessary for the animals, but too much of it is going to have some detrimental effects. So for lignin, it increases with age, yeah, and it makes the plant therefore less digestible. And the other thing is for fiber, the fiber content in plant is measured in three ways, and it's expressed as a percentage of the dry matter. So we have neutral detergent fiber, we have acid detergent fiber, and we have effective fiber. Yeah. So what is NDF? In short, if I have to consider that there are farmers here who have no idea, so we can't get too much into the science, but I'll try to explain as simple as possible. But the NDF, the neutral detergent fiber, is the measure of the total fiber in the feed. Yeah. So this is both the digestible and indigestible, and that includes the cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. So NDF is a measure of all of that. I know previously, like years ago, people used to call it crude fiber, but nowadays, the more you do lab analysis, we now measure fiber in terms of NDF. So it is a measure of both the digestible and indigestible. It's a measure of all the total fiber in the feed. So for NDF, what you have to remember is the higher the NDF in a plant, the fuller or the faster the cow or the animal gets full. And the lower the NDF, the more the cow can be able to eat. Then we talk about acid detergent fiber. This indicates mostly digestibility. Yeah. And it measures more the resistant part or the less digestible part of the plant cell wall, and this includes the cellulose and the lignin. Yeah. So what you have to remember from that is the higher the ADF, because these are some of the terms you will find when you do analysis of your forages. These are some of the terms that you find in that analysis. So ADF, acid detergent fiber, yeah, it indicates digestibility and measures only cellulose and lignin. But for neutral detergent fiber, it measures all. It's the total amount of fiber in that feed. So for ADF, what you have to remember is the higher the ADF, the lower the digestibility of that food. Yeah. And the lower the ADF, the higher the digestibility of that particular feed. So for effective fiber, what I can say for effective fiber is fiber is required by ruminants, yeah, for efficient rumen function. We really need that. We need that effective fiber for the rumen to be able to function properly. So the effective fiber basically measures what is effective in terms of stimulating rumination, yes, and saliva production. So this is basically just, it talks about the chop size and the particle size. So what we usually look at when we're talking about effective fiber is for things like hay and straw, they are high in effective fiber compared to things like cereal grains. Cereal grains are lower in effective fiber, but hay and straw are very high in effective fiber. And the other thing is maybe to note is it is not usually possible to measure effective fiber in some of the ingredients like pastures. For pastures, it's not easy to measure the effective fiber, but for things like hay, straw, and cereal grains, you are able to measure the effective fiber. So, in short, um, effective fiber is really crucial or important because it stimulates the rumination. Once rumination starts taking place, there is the ability for the cow to be able to chew, and there's saliva production. And this is very important because saliva is basically sodium bicarbonate, and that is baking soda for what people know mostly as baking soda. So it stimulates production of saliva, which contains the sodium bicarbonate and phosphate salts. And this is very important because now that sodium bicarbonate acts as a buffer for the rumen pH, yeah, so that it's not too acidic and it's not too basic. And another important thing is that it also promotes the rumen microbes. In the rumen there are different microbes for different functions. There are those that deal with the carbohydrates, things like the cereals and all that, and there are those that are dealing with the digestion of the forages. So it is very important to be able to have this understanding when you're talking about hay and straws. So as I've said, effective fiber, it helps in terms of rumination, it helps in terms of saliva production, which in effect then helps with the efficient rumen function. And you don't have issues with things like acidosis and things like that. So just to give an example, if a cow or an animal is being fed with very high a diet high in starch, yeah, the preferential digestion is that of starch. Starch is what is going actually to be digested faster than the fiber. Then now when that happens, what happens is there's more production of acids like propionic acids and lactic acids. But when you have and that becomes a problem because now it makes the rumen too acidic. So when you now have enough effective fiber, then there's a sort of a control and a balance. And that's why I tell farmers, you cannot have in your trough, you cannot have more of the hay and very little of the good things like silage and concentrate. So you have to have a balance, because I see at times people go either way. We've also seen cases where now farmers are feeding more of the cereal grains, of the concentrates, and now that results to the acidosis, as we've said, because once there's very high starch in the diet, then you lead to acid production that is not good or suitable for rumen, the proper rumen function, and the microbes that are necessary for the rumen to function properly. um the other thing is, people have been asking about, what should I buy, which hay is good, and do I do roads, do I have other grasses. I know there are some people who have Kikuyu grass, but maybe not in large amounts that you can be able to make hay out of it. But I think the most common one is Rhodes grass, yeah, what we see a lot in Kenya and East Africa. Sometimes for Ethiopia and the rest, they have the teff grass, which is very common there. So for we have a very wide variety, in terms of nutrition. They vary differently, and there's a very huge variance for the different kinds of haze we have. But what is important to note is that most of the time grass haze have very high levels of NDF. Remember, NDF, we said NDF is the measure of the total fiber in the diet. So we have very high NDF levels and low proteins. And you can see from the diagram that I have. This source is from the one of the softwares, actually a software we've used for quite some time. It's called Ruminate, and we have different ingredients in it. We have a library that has, from analysis and also from just different publications, we were able to combine them and get averages. So grass hays have very high NDF levels and low proteins. Another thing is legume hays have higher protein and lower NDF. And you can see, if you compare something like Rhodes hay, and when you look at the table towards the end, where you have desmodium or lab or lucerne, you can see the NDF really varies. So grass have higher NDF levels compared to legumes. And legumes then have higher protein compared to the grass. Then one thing, the other thing to note is the stage of growth or the stage of harvest. It has a very huge impact on quality. I know one of the questions I had seen in the group is, what is more nutritious between maize and hay? And I'd say this sorry, I'd say this is dependent on the stage of harvest. If you harvest hay, if you harvest the grass when it's at boot stage, when the protein and energy levels are at optimum, I know it can be a point of contention, but I would say I think grass hays would be more nutritious than the maize stovers. Because if I look back at what people usually do once they harvest the maize, then they leave the plant. I know there are some who cut immediately and then dry, but there are some who leave it in the field until it dries completely, almost looks like wood, and then now they come and sell it to other people. Then at that level, I think, given the bit of nutrition I have, then that hay would be more nutritious compared to the maize stovers. But as I said, it is something to discuss. I think it has a lot of factors at play for you to be able to conclude that this is more nutritious than this. So stage of harvesting is really, it has a really big impact on quality. Then you'd have the people who wait for the grass to get to senescence, yeah. And this is just the natural aging of the crop, of the grass, where it is, the leaves have turned brown and things like that. Then when at that stage, definitely it has very low nutritional values and very high NDF. So it is dependent on the stage of harvest. And yes, because of this variability, we have to then inquire or request farmers to do analysis. And even in terms of the different cuts have different nutritional values, like the first cut and the third cut. So all these things at play, we usually request that farmers do analysis on their feeds so that you can be able to work on accurate accurate values. Yeah, but this is just a guide to be able to see what can work well for you if you have it available. Yeah, overgrown, I think what you usually have here in Kenya is mostly the natural grassland where you have, I know some people have seen farms where they say they have roads grass, but when you look at it, when you evaluate, you find that it's actually a mixture of natural grass. Yeah. And there are those who have pure roads, but mixed also with a bit of the natural grass. So that is why it is very important to do on-farm evaluation. When we come to straw, it is the same. Different straws have, different species have different nutritional values. But one thing to note is straw has very little energy and protein and very high fiber compared to hay. As we said, straw is a residue, crop residue. And hay you can be able to cut it at optimal value, at optimal nutritional value, therefore preserving it when it's at optimal nutrients. For straw, I think, because you have to harvest the the grain, then at times it has lower value than, but now it depends. When we're talking about straw, definitely we're not talking about the green one. It is the already dried one, the already preserved one. So straw nutritionally is known to have less energy and protein and very high fiber. Then it has high potential to reduce total feed intake. That's why we call it a filler material. Yeah. um yes, it has a very high potential. So for a person who feeds more of straw as a basal feed, then you'll find cows are getting fuller fast, but they're not able to get the nutritional requirement, if not well supplemented, that they require. Because we said the higher the NDF, the fuller the animal becomes. The lower the NDF, the more the animal can be able to take in. So how then do we make sure that we ensure that every bite counts? How do we then improve? Because there are now talks, there've been talks around how do we make sure that we improve the digestibility of these ingredients that we need in our farms, that are easily accessible, are readily available. How then do we improve? So you can see a few pictures there. We have one that the cows are enjoying, and as I look, I can see it does have a bit of hay, and the other one is eating more of the maize stalks, and a bit of the napier that has been, dried in a not so good way. But how then do we improve the digestibility of these feeds? One, as we talked about, is the stage of harvest, and I'll explain each one of them separately as we go on. Stage of harvest is very important. The other one is how to properly cure or store. The next one is the physical processing. And this is where now things actually go wrong at times, because I've seen farmers who don't cut their hay and straw, they just feed it as is. I've seen others who go to the extreme where they almost grind it that it looks like flour. And then I've seen others now who do the proper cut. So we will talk about that. We have chemical treatments, and I must say, I think in the decade that I have been in this industry, I personally have not seen any urea treatment. I know it was there probably before, but I've not seen it. At least what I now see is biological additives. But I've not come across in the 10 years that I've been in this industry where a farmer is actually, treating the hay and the straw, the stovers with the chemical ingredients. Then we have how to balance it in the TMR. So as we begin, maybe just to make you understand, is that our forages are different. Yeah. If I compare the temperate climate and the tropical climate which we are in, temperate climate, they have lower NDF. And with lower NDF comes higher metabolizable energy. Lower NDF also, as we said, the lower the NDF, the more the intake, and the easier it is. The crops or the forages are easily palatable for the animals. So with high energy and high intake, then comes high productivity. But when we look at our tropical forages, we find most of our tropical forages, actually, yeah, most of them have very high NDF. And this is dependent all on, the kind of photosynthesis that we have. We experience the temperate experience C3 photosynthesis, and as we experience C4. And because of this C4 and the way the sunlight hits, the plants, and them having to make sure they don't lose as much moisture and things like that, it's all scientific. Then it plays a part in them having naturally higher NDF. So with already being set at a disadvantage of higher NDF, then for us, I usually say for us in the tropics, then we have really to focus on the stage of harvest. We have to really put an emphasis on the stage of harvest. Don't just look at how much yield you want, but look at when can I remove or cut or harvest my ingredient, my plant at optimal. So with high NDF in our case, we have lower energy, yeah, because fiber in one way or the other affects the amount of metabolizable energy available for the animal. So with high NDF also means there is lower intake. High NDF, low intake, low palatability, or palatability is in question. So when we have the combination of low energy, low intake, then that is why you are seeing a lot of low productivity or lower productivity in our case. So with this in play, we really then have to focus on how then do we make sure that our crops or we harvest, what is that linkage between the maturity and the nutritional value. With the diagram I've sent, I'm projecting, you can see at very young, lash stages, the digestibility and the energy is high. But as you go down the graph, when you go down, you find as it becomes as it ages, yeah, as it ages, then the production, the energy goes down, yes, and the digestibility also becomes lower. So most of the time for us, we are usually at the hay I've been seeing in a lot of farms, we are usually at the dry grass stalks and dry stalks. Yeah, that is the kind of hay I see a lot of farmers purchasing. And when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about when in season. At times when in season, I do see the green hay, which is very good. Even when you do the hand test, you don't find it prickling. It's actually soft. But in most cases, we find the very dry hay. And of course, straws here are at the bottom of it. So with that, then we have very low energy, which is made available to the cow. And as we talked about lignin, we said lignin does affect how much the carbohydrates inside and the nutrients inside the plant are made available to the animals, because it blocks access, or it makes it rather difficult for the animal or the enzymes to be able to get that energy present. So with that, we usually say when it comes to senescence, and that is when the plant has, naturally aged, and this is where the leaves, the stem is brown. Then we find the dry matter digestibility is low. Dry matter digestibility lowers as the plant matures, and the energy also lowers as the plant matures. So with this in play, we usually recommend for farmers that you harvest your hay, your grasses, when they're at boot stage. And boot stage is just before they open the flowers. At boot stage, at least we say the energy and the protein is at optimal. But unfortunately, most of the time we find farmers who wait for the seed production, and once after they've harvested the seed, or the contractor is not here, or I'm not able to get somebody with a machine, and by that time you get somebody to come to harvest, it's already stem, more stem compared to leaf, or rather the leaves have already fallen, and now you're just harvesting the stem. So we are at a disadvantage already because of the C4 kind of photosynthesis. And then now put into play you harvesting not at the right time. So it is a lose, lose, lose kind of situation. And that's why we ask that a lot of farmers and hay producers, and people who are able to control, harvest at uh, boot stage, just before the flower opens. So where we've talked about the stage of harvesting, then we talk about getting the cut right. As I said, I've seen a lot of farmers who don't cut hay or straw. They feed it just, they just, actually the only thing they remove is whatever is binding the bale, and then they put it there. A lot of farmers are not cutting, or when they're cutting, they are using the wrong machinery, which actually doesn't cut the right size. So this is also one thing that plays a role. We've talked of effective fiber, but one thing to know is if they are very long particles, or long chop size, it takes the cow a lot of energy and effort to keep chewing. And the more it chews, the more energy that is being used or utilized to chew. And the larger the chops, as we'll see, longer chops, they encourage one sorting behavior. So you find in your trough, you'll find like circular, the cow is throwing away the long chops. And that's what I see a lot of farmers when they're coming to remove before they give another feed. They remove a lot of the long chops. And I think I did not put a picture, but there's a picture I saw where in the manure pit, or where you go to drop off your remains, there's a lot of hay and stovers and stalks that are left. And you can be able to improve that just by chopping right. So long chops, then it encourages the behavior of sorting, where cows will select the smaller chops, and so they'll keep throwing away the bigger ones. And then it reduces the dry matter intake, and it also increases the amount of time that the feed is taking in the rumen of the animal, because longer chops have to keep getting, the cow has to keep ruminating, bringing out to chew, and then once it's smaller, now it can be able to pass for more digestion. So it really increases the lag. It makes the digestion lag, and the microbes are not able to really attach well, so that they can work on digesting that particular ingredient. So we need to move away from long chops. We need to move away from that notion of you have to give your cows the hay and straw without cutting. You're actually giving your cows more of a headache. So we for smaller chops or shorter chops, this is about 1 to 1.5 centimeters. It discourages the sorting or selection or feed selection. Therefore, the cow is able to, at one bite, she's able to take as much as possible. It increases the dry matter intake. A cow can take more. I mean, that is just that goes without saying. All you need to do is observe. When you put longer chops, you'll find most of it remaining in the trough. Yeah. And I keep telling farmers, what is the cow telling you? Because that is what we call cow signals. What is the cow telling you? And she's not eating the longer chops. She's telling you she doesn't want the longer chops. So it increases the dry matter, shorter chops, and it also decreases the amount of time that food stays in the tract. It also decreases the lag to digestion, and it increases the surface area of which bacteria can attach. So I hope we can all move from no chopping or long chops to now shorter chops, which can be highly effective for the animal. So for when you come to issues of chemical treatment of hay or straw, mostly chemical treatment, it aims to improve digestibility and the nutritional value of low quality forages like hay and straw. And what happens is that um, these chemicals are able to they're able to break down these tough fiber components, or the chains that are there, the lignin chains. They're able to break them down to make the nutrients more readily available for the microbes. So one of the common chemicals used is urea. As I said, in the 10 years, I've honestly not seen a farmer doing this, but I know there are still people who do it. I'm not sure if anyone here does it, but I know there are some. Us particularly, we've not met farmers who are doing it. But yeah, they do use urea. There are others that are using other different chemicals, but for us, in our case, the urea is mostly what is being used. So what happens is the chemical agents, they break down the lignin cellulose bond, and this now allows the rumen microbes to be able to access the more digestible bits or parts of the carbohydrates. Then it also increases the nitrogen content, especially when you're using things like urea or ammonia. It increases the nitrogen content. And the other thing is it improves the softness. When you touch hay and straw, I mean, if you just take it, it does prickle, yeah. So it is not very soft, but once you do the treatments, they do improve the softness. For the smell, I'm not so sure. I don't think it smells nice, but I think there's a way they are able to mix with other things, and now it can encourage the cow to be able to take in a bit higher or a bit more compared to just having it as is. So mostly what happens is you have to chop the straw or hay into smaller pieces, and then you mix the solution of the urea solution. At times we say 4 kg urea in like 100 liters of water, and then per 100 kilograms of dry straw, yeah, or 4% of the, or what, in short, just mix 4% of the straw weight. Yeah. But it's not being encouraged, and I think it was discouraged because of several things. Overtreatment makes it, especially overtreatment with urea, makes it unpalatable and toxic. We read of toxicity because of animals being given I mean, the hay and straw that had been treated and not treated properly. So you have those issues of toxicity, and it's also not very good for us humans, those gases. So you need protective wear, and most of the people, I don't know whether they were using protective wear, so it does also play a detrimental effect in humans. And then now the thing is, after you've treated this straw, you need to mix it with other feeds to be able to now provide balanced nutrition. For biological additives, for the treatment of hay and straw, this is where microorganisms or enzymes are used to break down the tough parts of the plant fiber. Yes, so you're given microbial additives like fungi, bacteria. I think mostly what we have here is the microbes, the bacterial ones. We have enzyme additives. So how this works is the microbes and the enzymes, they partially digest that structural carbohydrate, and then it softens the plant tissues. So once they do that, they release the sugar and the nitrogen compounds, making it available, or increasing the availability of the energy and the crude protein for the animals. So this treated straw or hay becomes softer, it becomes less fibrous, it's a bit more aromatic, and then it improves palatability for the animal. I think the good thing with the biological treatment compared to the chemical one, it's that it's environmentally friendly. Yeah, because there are no chemical residues. Then it is safe and easy for the smallholders to use, and improves digestibility and the utilization of the nutrients. And it therefore enhances overall the rumen microbial activity when it's fed to the ruminants. So one thing I think for biological, and I think that's why it's on the increase. It's because of that. It is a bit easier to use compared to the chemical ones. We've not heard of issues. You can't hear of issues of toxicity and things like that, because these are also friendly to the rumen. Um, then finally is balancing both of these ingredients into the total mixed ration. And I will say for animals, and I know most of the farmers, when I tell them this, they get a bit shocked. But personally, for the rations I've been doing for quite some time, especially in early lactation cows is 0 to 100 days in milk. Most of them, because at this stage, at the calving, between calving and 100 days, they require more of high energy dense feeds. So I don't feed a lot of hay or straw in this stage, because they require more of the high energy dense feeds, that is the maize silage, the concentrates. And at times at this stage sorry, maybe you can mute. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, guys, maybe you can help me mute the others. It's a bit distracting. Hello, did you lose me? Have you lost me anywhere?
You can continue.
Okay. Mm, Let me just minimize this. Yeah, so what I was saying is for early lactation, which is between calving, after calving and 100 days, I usually feed at most half a kilo of hay or straw. And this is dependent on the other quality, the other kinds, the other quality feeds, or the other feeds that a particular farmer has. So if he has a very good quality silage, if he has the pak chong, or whatever other napier or panicum that is good quality, then I feed at least half a kilo. If it goes too much, maybe 1 kilo at most. But it is mostly because at early lactation they require more of high energy dense feed. And then as you go on along the lactation phases towards late lactation and dry cows, then the need changes. Yeah, the nutritional requirements change. So across the phases of lactation, I go increasing the amount of hay or straw I'm giving, so that by the time the cow is dry, yeah, she's eating most of her basal feed then becomes the hay, and you have now very little, because she doesn't demand a lot of energy, and yeah, she doesn't demand high energy feed at that time. So I'll go from either half a kilo, and then a kilo as I continue, and towards dry period she might be feeding 2.5, but it's all dependent on what other ingredients she has, or is the farmer has. So with lower quality ingredients, then you definitely need to look for more supplementation. But for beef, I think beef, because they don't have a lot of energy requirement, not really energy requirement, but because they're able to digest and efficiently, they're able to, they're efficient fiber digesters. Then you find for beef rations, yeah, totally different compared to dry dairy cows. Dairy cows have more nutrient requirements than compared to beef cows. Yeah. So that is it for balancing the ration. So the thing to note is when there is too much, when the fiber is too much in the ration, it then does have uh, effects, it costs you as a farmer, it costs you, and also it has detrimental effects to the animal. One, it slows down digestion. High fiber feeds, as I said, they contain a lot of lignin or high lignin, and these are hard for the microbes to be able to break down. So because of that, the feed stays longer in the rumen. Yeah. And once the feed stays longer in the rumen and not much nutrient is able to be gotten from it, then it's more like just giving your cow a headache for no good reason. But and then all that now reduces the rate of digestion, the feed passage out through the gut. So it makes the animal fuller for longer, but it eats less and it has less of the nutrient uptake. Then the other thing is it reduces the amount of energy available, or energy availability. The fiber, because it provides the structural carbohydrates. If it's too tough, the microbes are not able to access it easily. Yeah. So then there is less energy, or what we call the volatile fatty acids release during the fermentation. And this now makes, or the result of this is that the animal gets less energy, leading to lower milk yield, lower weight gain, lower production, and all that. So we really have to make sure that we don't give too much or excess. So when the fiber is in excess and it's indigestible, then the balance of the rumen microbes also change. Microbes that can't digest the protein and starch, they reduce because there's not enough food for them. Yeah. And then now the overall fermentation activity slows down. So the weaker microbe population grows, and this leads to poor feed efficiency. There's something we call feed conversion efficiency. and it's there when we're looking at diet. So we it is not just about you giving hay to the cow and straws to the cow. It also does play a very huge effect, role in the overall well-being of your cow. Then the other thing is, the more the fiber, the more the manure. And this we have seen with different farmer in different farms, where you find cows are producing more manure than they are producing milk, or they are producing more manure than they are gaining in terms of muscle weight and muscles. So undigested fiber, because it's not digestible, it passes through the digestive tract, and we often see it in the dung, yeah, as coarse fibrous dung. We do, when we go to the farms, we do manure tests where we just take a sieve, and when you see freshly dung that is fresh, we take it, measure it, and then we run it in cold water or running water until we are left with what is in the sieve. And then we do a bit of measurement. So we can take a 1 kilo, 1 kg weighing jug where we measure, we assume 100%. We measure what is there, we run it in the water, and then we measure what is left. So that is just one of the things you can do in your farm to see how fibrous is the diet you are giving. If it is 100 and probably what is left is almost 50, then we say that is just layman's language. You say that is at least 50% digestible. But you don't want as much remaining in the sieve, because then that means you have a lot of coarse fibrous dung that is there. It means it shows that the nutrients were not well absorbed, and that is a waste of nutrients, therefore lowering the total value, feed value. Also, animal performance drops. Yeah, when you have too much fiber in the diet, then there's less feed intake, poor body conditions, you have lower milk, lower meat production. And I mean, there's no farmer who wants to hear that or wants to experience that. With also excess fiber, you have lower nutrient demands. In beef cattle, especially, you're not able to get the rapid growth or the finishing stages, especially for the finishing stages. You have lower energy, you have lower protein requirements. Beef have lower energy and protein requirements compared to dairy cows that are producing milk, but still, you'll not be able to meet your growth rate. And this means now maintaining the weight, especially for beef cows, is going to be it's not going to be easy. And also just general health of the animal. So we really have to check on the quality of hay that you are giving your animals. And now, because there's that introduction of biological additives, then we have to really also think about how to be able to treat. If you're not able to get the quality that you want, then you have to try and make it easier for the animals. So the and then the other thing is, now, in terms of efficient fiber digesters, we've talked about beef cows being able to efficiently digest fiber compared to the dairy cows. So for this also, when the rumen microbes the rumen microbes are able to adapt, they are able to adapt to the cellulose semicellulose digestion, because that is the main component. We should be able to make sure that we give those steps that we have followed, where when you're curing, cure properly, when you're cutting, cut properly, and also check on the stage of harvest. Check on the stage of harvest, cut at the right time, as we've said. Then make sure you cure properly. That is storing. When you're storing, store it well. Make sure there's no access to moisture, that there'll be no molding. Then if you have very, very low quality hay or straw, make sure you at least treat them, so that the nutrients now that can be readily available for the animals. So we really have to check on that. And finally, I think when we talk about fiber, we cannot negate the issue of manure. As I told you, we have different scores, especially when it comes to dairy cows. And like score one, you can see it's very liquidy. It's a liquid, and that's usually what projects. It's almost like a projectile from the animal. And this mostly we see when there are seasons of rain. Like right now, I think in Kenya we've been experiencing, thank God this year we've experienced a bit more rain. And so you'll find a lot of animals in this stage, especially if they are doing pastures or you're giving them the very fresh ingredients. They do have this kind of manure score. So what you can do for this is just increase the effective fiber, and that is introducing the hay or straw in, as we've said, of course, top well. If you can get good quality, the better. If not, treat it well and then introduce it into the diet. Score 2 is not very different from score 1. It's still a bit of projectile, but it also sticks. One of the things we notice, it sticks at the rump of the animal, and this is mostly typical for the fresh cow, yeah, or cows on high quality pastures, and they are not being supplemented with good quality fiber. So also for this, you increase the effective fiber intake. That's just introducing the hay or straw into the supplementation you are giving. For score 3, this is the perfect manure for animals, especially dairy cows. And this, for this one specifically, when the cow, when there's manure production, you hear a plop sound. Yeah, there's that plop sound. So this is usually what is ideal, especially for milking cows. And when you look at it, it is like ring form. Yeah, it has rings. When you step on it, it usually doesn't leave a mark. It almost goes to back to the shape that it was. So this is the porridge, like this is the best consistency for dairy cows. The other one we see is score 4 and score 5. It's what I've seen in some of the farms for dairy cows, and this is not what we recommend. Score 4 is mostly for the dry cows, because I've said with the different stages of lactation, the requirement in terms of fiber or roughages is different. Early lactation cows, they don't require as much fibrous material roughages compared to the dry cows. So for score 4, it is okay, and it is recommended for dry cows and heifers, especially those, because they are on high roughage diets. But for things like for lactating cows, maybe in early and mid lactation and late lactation, you have to reduce the amount of fiber that you're giving your cows. Either maybe increase, whether you when if you have maize silage, you increase maize silage and decrease a bit of the hay. Because I see a lot of farmers, when we go to do rations, you'll find a farmer who is saying they are giving their cows 4 kilos and above. And when you look at the overall manure, it most of the time looks like this. And that is not good for a cow that is lactating. Then score 5, it should never, never, ever, ever appear in your farms. So this is evident of very high roughage in your diet, and most of the time when the cows don't have access to water, then the manure looks like this. So what you need to do to remedy this is just reducing the amount of fiber available for the cow, and of course making sure that they have as much water as possible available to them. So, as I said in the beginning, that fiber is both friend and foe to the animal. Yeah, it is a friend because she needs good fiber. She needs fiber to be able to have efficient rumen function. But too much of it, as we discussed in the slide before, too much of it also has detrimental effects in the rumen of the animal or in the cow. So we just need to make sure that we have a balanced diet, yeah, that keeps the rumen healthy, but can also, when you have too much fiber, it keeps the rumen, the fiber can keep the rumen healthy, but it can also block nutrients if it's too much. If lignin is too high, as I said, lignin is not part of the structural carbohydrates, but it does attach to them. And if it's too much, then it makes the structural carbohydrates and the nutrients in it not readily available for the animal. So what we need is to make sure that we, as much as possible, try to get to harvest it at the right stage, that is boot stage for the grasses. Make sure you do proper curing, make sure you store them properly, and if need be, if you don't have good quality, just make sure you are able to put additives, maybe treat them with additives, biological additives, and right now in the market they are available. I know some people might say, oh, cost, but I think what you have to work with what you have. If not, make sure you, when it's seasonal, when it's the season for hay and straws, make sure you buy and stock them. Therefore, feed planning really plays a very huge role in it. So best quality feeds have enough fiber for digestion, but it's still soft enough for the rumen microbes to be able to break down. And I think I will end there and allow for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for that very informative presentation. There's a lot that I did not know about hay, and you've been able to explain it really well in a way that we were able to understand. We've seen that hay can be helpful if used in the right way in our farms. We've understood its structure in terms of the cellulose and the lignin, and why it's important for our cows' rumens. I think we had a couple of questions on the chat. And one of them, I'm going to have Mausa go through the questions because I think I've lost the questions on my end. There was which machine to be used to chop hay.
Sorry, I don't know whether it's on my side, but it was lagging a bit. But I think you've asked which machine to use. Okay, what I've seen is with I don't know how to answer, because I've seen people who use chaff cutters and they're still able to get a bit of a good chop size. But I think the safest would be use of chopper, which you can be able to adjust the chop size you want. Just the same way for maize silage, it's better to use a chopper so that you can be able to adjust. So I would safely say maybe a chopper if you have. If not, if you have the chaff cutter, make sure it is sharp enough, and don't push it too fast so that you have very large chops.
Second question was on you did not cover bracharia. One of the learners was asking if it is part of the hay varieties, or you can get hay from bracharia. You did not have it in your presentation.
Yes, I've seen farmers who have bracharia hay. It is not very common, I think, because most people prefer feeding bracharia as cut and carry. But I have seen one farmer who has bracharia hay. And definitely, when you talk about nutritive value, especially if it is cut at the right stage, like at knee high, when it's not very mature, then you'll find it is more nutritious compared to the roads hay. It's just that it's not very common. Honestly, I've not seen a lot of people doing that. They just feed fresh.
The other question was on maize stovers. What is their role in TMR?
I think it was included in one of the tables that I had. Maize stover, it's part of the roughages of filler material. Yeah, and I know I know it might be contentious, but For me, I'd group maize stover and straw together, though I think it would be, yeah, I would group it slightly together, so sort of in the same category for filler material. And as I said, for if you want good production and good weight gain, they should not be the basal feed, because one maize silage, it has more of it has very high NDF. It has very high NDF compared to even the grasses. So if it has high NDF, meaning probably the lignin is higher, then it doesn't make the animal is not able to easily access the nutrients in it. If there is any, there'd be very little. So it would act as a filler material. So still include it in small proportions if you're not able to get the hay, or if it's in a lot of, if it's, because I see a lot of people when when the maize season is over and it's readily available, then they choose to feed maize stovers rather than hay. I've seen some people do that just to make sure the hay stays longer. But yeah, I think we said if grass is cut at a good stage, then I personally would say hay would be more nutritious than maize. And I know people might have different opinions.
All right. The next question, Angela, is whether people can use sugarcane and if there's any value in feeding sugarcane. I think this should be the sugarcane leaves.
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 Uh,
Matawi ya miwa.
um, so is it the dry matawi, the green matawi? I think maybe the person asking that should but as we said, even for hay, we look at the stem to leaf ratio. Reason is in the leaves, there's more nutrients compared to the stem. Stem has a possibility of having more lignin, and still the same thing. If lignin is very high in the plant, then it blocks because it attaches to the structural carbohydrates. Then it limits the amount of the structural carbohydrates available to the animal. So leaves would be better, definitely, but how do they look like? How is the curing? Is it the leaves that are brown, hiyo yenye imewekwa to senescence, or how does it look like? Yeah, but definitely leaves would be more nutritious.
The other question that Sisi was asking is, I think most farmers buy hay and it's usually really badly overgrown, mixed etc. I am yet to come across real good, nutritious quality hay. If you have, kindly recommend. Maybe this is you can give your opinion because he says that generally locally we do not have quality hay, that the one you are presenting on. Of course, he's asking if there are those in the training who are doing hay or in our different networks. But what is your take on this bad hay that most farmers tend to access as they go shopping?
Yeah, that is unfortunate. Yes, as we said, uh, a lot of what we see in farms is not, it's the low quality hay. And I think then when we have that, then that's when now improving their digestibility takes it takes effect. Then we have to now improve how easily digestible this will be to the animal, so that now becomes an introduction of the biological additives. And maybe something I didn't mention then would be also molasses. I've seen people cut hay or straw, soak them overnight in a mixture of molasses and water. That also makes it easily palatable, yeah, and of course increases a bit of the energy because these are sugars. So yes, since we can't avoid this, you can only avoid it by doing your own farm production, where you then make sure that you cut at the right stage, that boot stage. But if not, then the other hay that is available, you just have to see a way of improving its digestibility.
Good. The other question is, do we use normal urea for chemical treatment? What of nitrate, poisoning, and altering the rumen pH? This is from BD Davis.
Yeah, I think that's why I said I personally, if there's anybody here, I would say if there's anybody here who has attempted or has done before urea treatment, please feel free to maybe give us your experience. I know there's also nitrates that at times they do use what is it called? Let me just get the name. But what has been commonly used, I think even, back when I was in primary, I could hear people talking about, what is it called? They were talking about urea. Yeah, that was there back then. Um, I see somebody saying here there's a feed urea. So maybe somebody who has an experience in that can let us know. I've not come across that part. I've only come across a lot of the biological treatments, but not the chemical ones. But maybe Silas, you can give an opportunity to someone who has come across the feed grade urea.
Okay, yeah, so urea is a gray area and that needs to be handled very carefully from our experts, but we would keep checking on its use. Another one is asking a follow-up question about urea. If I use urea, can I feed my cow right away, or what amount of time is required? Angela, did you get the question?
Sorry, yes.
All right.
Okay, from literature, I know they were recommending like 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, make sure you store it for 2 to 3 weeks. But I think with I've seen someone saying the feed grade urea. I would think it might be different. That's why I was asking, is anyone here familiar with that? With that feed grade urea, is it different from the previous urea people were using? That would be interesting to hear. But yeah, it was saying that you take 2 to 3 weeks before you feed for it to, to break down that lignin.
All right.
Silas, if you want me to put my question directly to Angela,
Yes.
I'm following very well from Wajir.
Yeah.
I was wondering whether super napier and this Chinese grass junkao, if it can be converted into a hay, cut, dried, stored, then crushed and given to the cows without the ensiling. Of what value will that be? Probably as a hay.
Okay, I think for Napier, the spa Napier and all that, the curing process is what I think mostly discourages a lot of farmers from doing it as a hay because of the high moisture content and the amount of time it would take for it to properly cure. And then, because I've not seen a lot of people doing Napier hay. Yeah, they do wilt the napier and it's kept for a time and then it's chopped. But proper napier hay, I've not seen a lot of. Actually, I've not seen farmers practicing, and I would think it was because of the curing, because it has very high moisture content compared to the other grasses. So it would have very high levels of molding if not properly cured, and I think that's why a lot of people sort of shy away from that. But definitely, as I said, for you to look at the nutritive value, it always plays into what was the stage of harvest. If you harvest it when it's overgrown, then definitely you have lower values. But when it's at a good stage, what we usually mostly say is maybe knee high or 1.21 to 1.5 meters, then definitely you have better chances of having protein and energy and good NDF. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Thanks.
So
Another question that
with the
Brian is
information,
asking. Another question that Brian is asking is for beef cows, does maize silage alone meet the required NDF without incorporating hay in the TMR? This is about the NDF in maize and beef feeding.
I think what you said is hay and straw is necessary. Yeah. Yes, it might get you NDF levels that are suitable, but we still need that extra uh, fiber part from the hay. I've seen, okay, for beef, I'm not so sure, but for dairy, I've seen people who are feeding on just maize silage and concentrates with very little to no hay or straw, but still it is really a very delicate balance. So I would think you, that's why I told you, for me in rations I have included very little, especially for high production animals, and then as you go down the lactation phase I go increasing it. And as you've heard, for me I don't do the 4 to 6 to, it is mostly between 2 to 3 kilos per cow at most. Yeah. So in as much as it might meet the NDF, but you still need to have that fiber bit from the hay. I would think that.
with admin's permission, if I may give some guidance on urea.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The primary difference between what people call feed grade or encapsulated urea and fertilizer urea is the levels of impurities. The most critical impurity to check in is normally the rate of borates, which would affect and cause poisoning in the animal. Secondly, feed grade urea is normally coated so that then you're able to include it into a TMR, whereas fertilizer urea degrades quickly based on the level of moisture. So ideally, most people would say feeding feed grade urea is much better as opposed to fertilizer grade urea. However, without naming brands, and from using it primarily in managing the costs of protein in TMRs, you find that the poisoning value, as long as you remain within limits, is negligible or non-existent. And secondly, you also find that if you look at the price points, both of them have 46% nitrogen, which is then now turned into protein in the rumen. You'll find that there's a core difference in that at 46%, feed grade, you'll buy it at an average of 200 plus per kilo, as opposed to fertilizer grade at a price of about 80 or less per kilo. So it allows you the room to add in what you call a compassion to control the amount or the excretion of the borates or the ions, which you necessarily not need in the ration. Thank you.
Thank you for
I hope
that,
I've helped
Douglas.
somebody. Yeah.
Yes.
Then I think the other question was also on the time. When you're using feed grade, you can feed it immediately. The challenge with the fertilizer grade is that you're forced to leave it for some time. And in all cases, wherever you want to use urea, you must also include cane molasses. It is not an if, but a must, because then that molasses provides the energy in the rumen to break down. Most people run to urea to reduce the costs. If you look at the cost, say, of fish meal, soya, cotton cake, it's up there. And you find that 0.1 or 100 grams of urea would provide quite significant protein, as would maybe 3 or 2 kilos of, say, soya, because a lot of it will also be left out in the rumen. So the ideal is always to add in molasses, which will help break down and boost the rumen microbes to be able to synthesize the urea and then now turn it into protein. On using it on straws, from experience, I'd say it's pointless, because feed grade urea will not dilute as well in water. For you to treat straws or maize stovers, you need contact with water, and you also need to give it time for absorption. So a lot of people who do it do not end up with the right results, simply because you need to allow a factor of 6 to 12 hours for there to be absorption, and it needs to be in a controlled environment. In most cases, you find that you'll do it out in the field. As soon as you pour the the solution, the moisture kind of picks up, and then the sun comes out, and you end up with particles on the straw beddings or on the maize stovers. I think that answers everyone.
Yes, thank you for that, Douglas.
The last question is, what type of bacteria can be used for the biological treatment? This is a question from Mifta. I think it's still on the treatment that you talked about, chemical and biological.
I've seen there's subtilis, and then there's also the lactobacillus species. So either of the two.
I think, Jerry, we are done with the questions. And
Thank you, Mosa, for taking us through the questions. And I'd like to thank all the participants that joined us today. As I mentioned before, this lesson was part of the Fodder Fast series. Last week we looked at the napiers. This week we've looked at hays and straws. The next week we're going to finish up the lesson on napier. I would encourage you to join us every Friday at 2:30 as we go through this series. Thank you for your participation, and I would like to thank our facilitator, Angela, for a very comprehensive lesson. And we look forward to seeing you next week, same place at 2:30. We'll communicate more on the DAFMA group, and if you've not joined the DAFMA group, I think the link is on the chat. Kindly join us. This conversation usually spills over to the group, and we continue on with the conversation, and we'll be sharing more about the upcoming lessons. Thank you and have a blessed afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.